Hi guys, Jay Norton here once again, and I wanted to talk today about a LinkedIn post that I saw just a few hours ago. And it's talking about a guy, well, the guy is talking about himself leaving Japan. And if anything, with you guys, I only ever want to be realistic. Like, I sometimes the things that I say might sound negative, they might sound unfair, or they might sound super supportive. But the important thing is, I always try to see the real meaning or the real side of everything, even if it's not necessarily something I agree with. Do I think the visas should change, for example? Maybe not. But do I understand why? Yes, for the most part. So I always want to try and be as realistic as possible. I don't want to lie and sugarcoat things. And this is talking about a guy from Australia. He's probably not going to see this video. We've not met per se. We've been in the same room once. Earlier, was it last year or earlier this year? I attended something called a story slam, which was like it was in Tokyo somewhere. I can't remember where in Tokyo it was, but we were all in a bar. Um, and we 10 of us told a personal story that kind of shaped who we are. And I came third place for my story, which was about not wanting to meet my dad, even though growing up in a single household was very, very difficult. Because I know a lot of you like to call me privileged and growing up rich, even though I grew up very, very poor. Anyway, I'm going to read through this post. It's going to take a couple of minutes, so please bear with me. I'll try and put on my nicest reading voice. All good things must come to an end. I cannot express how much I love living in Japan, but after much discussion and even more sleepless nights trying to figure out a way to make this work, my wife and I have made the call and will be returning to Australia after 4 years in Fukushima. I've been dreading buying my plane ticket home because I knew as soon as I did, the decision would be final. But I'm glad I did because I finally felt a sense of relief that I could get back to the life where I can work and have a sense of purpose by getting up and going to work every day. I miss that feeling. The hard thing about moving back home is that I have spent years cultivating what I feel is the perfect life. My friends, my family, and my daily life are exactly what I have always wanted. Living in Fukushima City is like living in the mid 90s. The mid 90s was the best time of my life, so I'm getting to have the same experience all over again, but in another country. I feel that living in Japan is getting harder. I haven't been successful in finding work despite applying for hundreds of jobs, hundreds and hundreds of roles. I keep applying for longer term visas but only get 1 year rolling spouse visas, and I'm just out of money and time to keep trying to make something work that isn't bringing anything in return. I feel hamstrung, and the only option in this life feels like relocating to Tokyo without my family because being in Tohoku to work a hybrid role is not acceptable based on all the jobs I've looked at. That is not a life I am willing to live just to put food on the table. It would be like living two lives, and I don't want two. One is more than enough. That's why Australia makes most sense. My wife and I can both work. My wife has more flexibility and opportunity to broaden her personal and career horizons, and my son will get the type of education I want for him as a parent. It's going to be hard to say goodbye to this life and settle back into my life back home. I'm more Japanese in my way of thinking and the way I conduct myself than people back home realize. But that's not their issue. I need to adapt as I've always done if I want to make life go smoothly. I'm super grateful for just the rest of it is just thank you everyone. So to get to the base of it, he has failed at building a career in Japan. Like I know obviously he's not put that into words, but he's failed. And the obvious thing is that in this post he's not going to reflect on why that is. However, this is kind of a lesson for people who might want to live in Japan, or if you have a Japanese spouse and you're thinking about moving back to Japan. There are some signs that you have to be very careful about. First of all, they live in Fukushima. I don't want to sound rude, but what do you expect to get in Fukushima? Japanese people don't even get good jobs in Fukushima because it's much more countryside. There's not really that big a city, no, not so many big cities. There's Fukushima City, but it's not exactly like there's no recruitment jobs, there's barely any IT jobs. It's just people working in offices making the city run, insurance companies, car companies, petrol stations, supermarkets. It's not the budding, bustling, growth bringing city that maybe you should be living in. There's a reason why, and this is not Japan exclusive, so please be careful when you listen to this. But for example, if I moved back to my hometown in England, which is Bolton, my wife is gonna find nothing. The opposite applies. Like, you have to be very careful about where you live. There's a reason why it would be better if we lived in the middle of Manchester or London, like that, because that's where all the opportunities are. If my Japanese wife is gonna move to the UK and she wants to work, she has to work in the places that can offer her the career that she has here in Tokyo. Okay, maybe she moves to Bolton. She might be able to work in a supermarket or a charity shop, or she might be a Japanese teacher online. That's not her dream. That's not the dream that she wants for herself if she was to move to the UK. She wants to work in business. She wants to do something similar she does now, where she's building something, she's making good money. You These things are so important. And the reason I can sense, the reason that he lives in Fukushima City with his wife, is I'm guessing that's where his wife is from. And his family wanted them to be there, and his wife probably wanted them to be there. And that's the problem, because you chose that road to go on. You could have chose to live in Tokyo. Now, in my family's case, we are very, very lucky. We live very close to Tokyo, and my wife's parents live just down the street. Actually, my daughter's staying there today because it's her summer holidays, and she's like, I'm bored, guys. You guys are working. Can I just go stay at my grandparents' house for a few days? I was like, yeah, of course, get out, get out. But those are the sacrifices that get made. That's not Japan's issue. And I don't want to sound harsh, but that's not Japan's fault, and that's not Japan's problem either. That's your family making that decision, which you think is best for your family, and you have to make a sacrifice. If my wife's family lived in Fukushima and we lived in Tokyo, we would be far away from her family. That's the sacrifice that we would make for both wanting to make careers here in Tokyo. And the thing is, he mentions about how Japan can't give him a career, Japan can't give him work, but he also talks about how he has a Japanese mindset and doesn't want to separate from his family to do hybrid work in Tokyo from Tohoku. I mean, a lot of Japanese people, oh God, it's been so long since I've heard this word. Is it Tanshin Fuyo? Tanshin Fuyo? It's like when one of the parents works away for parts of the week because their office is quite far away. Or they might have business in a different part of Japan. Because he doesn't have a job in Australia either, which means he isn't actually in any position to be successful in Australia either. He's going to go look for work now, and move. He's going to move back in October and hopefully have a job back for when his family come over in December. So it doesn't sound like it's Japan's fault. Is he more likely to be successful in Australia? Sure. Is his wife likely to be more successful in Australia? I think she's more likely to get a job in Australia than you are to get a job in Japan. But also, can you speak Japanese? I don't think this guy can speak Japanese. So that was obviously another barrier. We can't make magic happen. So I think a lot of people are starting to think about their life in Japan, what their future in Japan looks like. And a lot of people do have to be realistic and say, it's not just about the visas. He talks about the rolling 1 year visas, but if he doesn't have income and a job to support his family, and it seems like they're out of money, which means they've used all their savings, would it be fair for Japan to give you a longer visa if you can't even support yourself on 1 year visas? The visa doesn't really seem to be the problem. So what do you guys think? Like, do you think sometimes people have to have a good hard look in the mirror and think like, I didn't do enough to be successful in Japan? Because if you had the skills that Japan needed, you would get a job. That's You can't apply for hundreds of roles that you would be suited to and not get any of them. If you've applied for hundreds of roles in Japan, one would question what the roles were that you were applying for, because there aren't that, it's not like going into like California and there being like millions of jobs to choose from. The jobs are pretty limited. So if you're applying for all of them and getting nothing, you mustn't have the best resume in the first place, and you don't have the language skills, and you chose to live in Fukushima City. I mean, what did you expect? Like, and this is what meant at the beginning when I said, like, I have to be realistic when I talk about these things. There are foreigners who talk about getting PR in the countryside, like, oh, is it going to account for the national average of the whole country, or is it just going to be in the place that we live? I mean, either way, what were you expecting to build in Saga Prefecture, or what were you expecting to build in Akita Prefecture? All there is to do there is teach English. As long as that teaching job still exists. See my previous video. I think it might have been my previous video, or maybe the one before, about English teaching jobs going away. But guys, please let me know what you think. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all next time.